The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I'm your host, as always, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at JoeBlow.com as well as ThisIsInfamous.com. And look, special week here on the show, on the podcast. This is the second episode you've gotten this week. Earlier this week, in case you missed it, go back and check it out. Did a special edition of the show to break down thoroughly SummerSlam and NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Just too much wrestling. Too much wrestling over SummerSlam weekend to fit into one show. So instead, two jam-packed shows for you. And this one gonna be no different. Got a special guest coming up in just a little bit. Former Divas champion Torres Gracie here on the podcast, in order to talk about women's wrestling as well as her brand new motion picture, Skiptrace. So just hold on for a little bit and we'll get to her and our conversation. Lots to talk about this week as we emerge from SummerSlam weekend. Lots to talk about as far as Raw and the new direction of the Universal title and Finn Balor. Lots to talk about as it pertains to SmackDown Live as well, and the creation of their Women's Championship and Tag Team Championship for that distinct brand. But before I talk to Torres Gracie, there's one thing I want to discuss here at the outset of the show. One thing, and this is a thing that right now is on everybody's mind as it pertains to the WWE and their product and what's going on right now. So as I record this, just last night, following SmackDown Live, on the WWE Network, there's a program called Talking Smack. Brand new program on the network. That's sort of the post-game show for SmackDown on a weekly basis. And what it mostly is comprised of is Renee Young at a desk with Commissioner, or is it General Manager, I guess, Daniel Bryan. Sometimes Commissioner Shane McMahon will stop by. And it's mostly an interview segment. Interview segments after interview segments. And it's not always people just in character or in persona. A lot of times there is an ounce of truth to what's going on. It is sort of mimicking the Stone Cold podcast in a number of ways, in that it is sort of an extended interview, but storylines and angles are tied in at times, but you sort of do get a sense of who some of these people are, who John Cena is as a person, what wrestling means to him, and not necessarily John Cena in John Cena mode, as we see in ring when he cuts a promo. So Talking Smack has been a real interesting addition to the WWE programming, which already has a lot of programming to sort of sit through on a weekly basis, but as an asset to the SmackDown brand, essentially being the answer to the third hour of Raw, where Raw has 3 hours to develop their storylines, their angles, their characters. SmackDown only has 2, but they have now used Talking Smack as sort of an asset in their corner to help viewers get a better sense of who their talent is, what they want, what they stand for, and as we saw last night, where certain storylines could be going. So last night, a truly tremendous segment that involved The Miz, Intercontinental Champion on the SmackDown brand, and once again, General Manager Daniel Bryan. Now, we all know the history with Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan, due to concussion issues, essentially no longer medically cleared to compete inside a wrestling ring as an active talent. A truly heartbreaking situation for anyone who's ever been a Daniel Bryan fan, who loves the character, loves the underdog status, anybody who that character resonated with. Really a tough loss for wrestling. And also, just a tough loss watching Daniel Bryan as a human being, knowing his love and passion of professional wrestling, and seeing him unable to do the thing that he loves. Now, as I spoke in episodes past, very cool to see Daniel Bryan be able to sort of come back in the way he is now, as a commentator for the Cruiserweight Classic, as the general manager for SmackDown, and still be involved in wrestling somehow. To be able to find second life in the thing that he loves, even though he's not allowed to do the thing he believes he could still do, if not for the medical clearance issues. And so The Miz comes out on Talking Smack last night and interrupts the show, talking about how he feels disrespected as the Intercontinental Champion. How Daniel Bryan seems to have a problem with The Miz. And The Miz wasn't going to stand for it anymore. And at that point, Daniel Bryan, who has been rather frank at times on Talking Smack about the things he likes, the things he doesn't like, the things he approves and disapproves of, between both SmackDown and Monday Night Raw, let The Miz know that yes, there is a problem. There's not a problem with the Intercontinental Championship. He respects that title. He just does not necessarily respect The Miz. That he thinks The Miz wrestles like a coward. That he thinks The Miz is soft. That he thinks The Miz is the epitome of the problems that symbolize the WWE in past years, and is not really the direction that they would like to go in moving forward, with more exciting, more hard-hitting, more action-packed, more compelling, more adrenaline rush-filled in-ring wrestling. And he said The Miz wrestles like somebody who doesn't want to get hurt, doesn't want to get hit. Sort of a insulting assessment and analysis of The Miz as Intercontinental Champion and WWE talent. And for that, The Miz unleashed hellfire on Daniel Bryan. If you haven't seen the clip, you can find it online because the WWE and the WWE Network have been pushing this thing all day. You could also find it if you just tune into the network as part of Talking Smack. But The Miz unleashed this tremendous rant on Daniel Bryan about how he's not the coward. Daniel Bryan is the coward. That while The Miz comes out night after night and defends the Intercontinental Championship, it's Daniel Bryan that didn't hold true to his promises to the WWE Universe to be back inside that ring and recapture the Intercontinental Championship, the last title he ever held, which he had to give up due to the injuries. And where Daniel Bryan tries to sort of retort by saying he would love to come back into the ring, but he's not allowed to. The WWE won't medically clear him. The Miz got right up in his face and told him that he was a coward for taking that sort of decision. And then why doesn't he just quit? Why doesn't he just quit and walk away from the WWE and go to the bingo halls and the gyms with his indie friends and prove that he can still do it? Ignore medical advice from the WWE professionals and walk away and quit and still show that he can wrestle just somewhere else. And for that, Daniel Bryan put down his mic and he got up and he walked away from this confrontation, to The Miz still screaming after him what a coward he was and how now he's a coward walking away. And you could sort of see the emotion in both performers at this time. The Miz angry to have been slighted for all the hard work and effort he's put into making his dream as a WWE superstar come true and now being the Intercontinental Champion. And you saw the emotion sort of come over Daniel Bryan's face of being hit with this slightly skewed version of the truth. That this is the reality he now lives in. It was a reality he didn't choose, but was forced upon him in a number of ways. And one that you know is still a very tough pill for him to swallow. Not being able to wrestle anymore. And, I mean, it felt real. It felt genuine. But more importantly, it felt like something you had to see. It felt like something you had to watch. It felt like something you had to sort of run through your mind in order to figure out if this was real or not. And because of the reality aspect that Talking Smack has lived within since its inception, that just sort of feeds into the authenticity of the interaction between both gentlemen on Talking Smack. And so now this has set the wrestling world abuzz. Fans everywhere are talking about this. Everywhere. And they want to know, was it a work? Was it a shoot? Was it a worked shoot? Was it a shot work? And my answer to that on this show, where we bring logic and perspective and reasoning into the equation and disallow fanboy speak, my answer to that is that I don't know. And I don't care. What I know is that what I watched was so good, so captivating, that I have to know where it goes next. Right now, you're talking about this segment with all of your friends. All of your wrestling fan buddies. And that's when wrestling is at its best. That's when wrestling is doing what wrestling is supposed to do. And by blurring the lines, they've created an atmosphere now where it feels real. Like it once did. It feels personal. And especially knowing sort of the history with The Miz and Daniel Bryan, with The Miz going back and being Daniel Bryan's mentor during his sort of NXT, the initial days of NXT, when it wasn't necessarily a developmental brand, but sort of this extra reality-based show brought in to sort of move new talent up. It feels like a genuine rivalry, like a genuine hatred between two people. And while you're not going to necessarily then get a match or a true in-ring confrontation that could blow off this feud, you do have this very hot boilerplate angle brewing up on the stove at SmackDown. And it has people now taking notice of The Miz, who I think had been written off for far too long as illegitimate in a number of ways, even though I think he's a tremendous top-flight heel. And once again, you now increase the value of the Intercontinental title by proxy because The Miz is the one who holds it. You know, Daniel Bryan is one of the nicest guys. And as a result, you feel for him in this moment and sort of being slapped in the face. With having to hear about how he can't wrestle anymore due to medical reasons and how that somehow now makes him a coward. And The Miz, who can be brash, is still put in a position where he shows a passion for wrestling. Even if you may look at the words that came out of his mouth and say, that crossed the line. That crossed the line with Daniel Bryan. And I know The Miz to some degree, and genuinely a dude who does love wrestling. Sort of a snarky smartass period that's just in his tone and his personality, just sort of the way he carries it. But it's usually in good fun. It's good natured. So once again, do I think that The Miz just decided to shoot on Daniel Bryan on the spot? I don't know, and I don't care. Do I think they were both in on it in order to work the audience? Once again, I don't know, and I don't care. What I do know is that we're all talking about this. And for that, this moment in SmackDown history worked to the fullest effect. And I hope we get more of this true reality-based, unscripted feeling interaction between superstars. Because that's what draws people in. That's what gives people emotional investment. That's what forces people to take a side. And it's also what gets your talent over. And gets your talent noticed. It makes your show important. So kudos to SmackDown. Kudos for whatever happened here. Because if we're all paying attention to this degree, you did what you're supposed to do. Alright, so those are my comments there, at least to open the show. We'll get into some more SmackDown Live a little bit later, as well as Raw, the situation involving Finn Balor and his injury and the Universal title. But right now, I want to bring on to the show a very special guest. I've had conversations with her in the past. Always a tremendous interview. She's the former 3-time WWE Divas champion. She's currently an instructor for the Gracie Women Empowered Self-Defense Program. And her new film, Skiptrace, starring Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville, is in theaters and on demand as of September 2nd. My guest right now, Eve Torres Gracie.
Hi, Bayley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for taking the time today.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So the last time we spoke, which is not too long ago, actually, the Scorpion King 4 was in the process of being released. And you were still sort of getting your feet wet, so to speak, as an actress. Since then, you showed up on Supergirl. Now you have Skiptrace. Are you getting a little bit more comfortable, a little more acclimated to the process, the more projects you now get under your belt?
I absolutely am. Yeah, I think that it's just like anything else. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the more you learn. And from every project I've been a part of, I've taken something different from it, and I've learned something different. And also, the process is just different. All the way from auditioning to to kind of developing your character, all the way to the end product on film. So from each of these, I've not only had fun, but I've just really learned a lot.
Well, Skiptrace is a very unique animal as far as feature films are concerned because there's a lot of different moving parts to make it happen. It's American, it's Chinese, it's Hong Kong. It's very global in its assembly process. Yeah. So how did it make its way to involve you then in the role of Dasha, considering all those very different cultural elements being brought together?
Yeah, it was interesting because, I think what happens, and now that I've kind of been a part of it, I see that, when they're putting a film together for Jackie, they kind of start there, obviously, because he's Jackie, right? And then they kind of say, okay, who do we want to bring in? And, and this was one of those where it's like the great combination of Jackie plus an American jackass, which is like literally who Johnny Knoxville is, right? And that combination is always just like so magical and so great. And then they wanted to bring in this kind of Russian element. Now they could have gone to Europe, but then they also said, well, maybe we can find someone, some Americans that can also play this role. And they also wanted somebody who they knew that they wanted a woman who could do some of her own stunts, because it's hard to find, especially in China, where it's hard to find women who are like my size that can, on film actually be a legitimate stunt double. So that was another part of it. So I think that's why they kind of came to the conclusion of looking, reaching out to my agent. And then I put myself on tape and everything worked out for the best.
Well, you do have a fight scene with Jackie Chan, who for the most part has done all of his stunts in the past. So what is that process like of choreographing a sequence with him, especially considering that he's done a number of films over the years. So there is sort of this mindset of not repeating yourself, of doing things, not necessarily by the book, but to keep things fresh, keep things innovative. So, how is it a collaborative process? I know he has like his own stunt team that really sort of helps assemble it. So what is that process like of putting together a scene like that?
Yeah, I will say it's so different from any other stunt kind of work I've done in the past, or fight scenes that I've done in the past. And part of it is completely collaborative, meaning Jackie has his brilliant idea that he comes up with. And sometimes you'll hear his ideas and you're thinking, how are we ever going to do that? Like, that's impossible. And then his stunt team goes, okay. And they get to work and they just run around and sign this and sign that and rig this and rig that. And then all of a sudden you've got Jackie's idea that just came to life. And that's how the Matryoshka doll scene was, which is the scene that I have with Jackie in this toy factory. And, when you hear it in theory, you're like, how is that even going to happen? And then sure enough, to watch it come to life is so cool. But they literally taught me the choreography on the spot. So they come up with it right then, and partly because they're using the scene, they're using the props that are there. So it's hard to plan in advance until, the set is completely set up. Then we're there and they're saying, okay, you can use this and use that and swing from this. And so everything is done on the spot. They teach it to you then, they show it to you. You can kind of collaborate if something doesn't feel right or something feels better for you to do something, a little bit differently. And then they shoot it. And that's pretty much how everything worked in terms of both of the fight scenes there. But it was really cool to watch these professionals just make magic happen.
Does it then make it a little bit more difficult to pull off because of the fact that you are learning it on the spot and he has so many other responsibilities going on with the film that then in the moment you're literally learning this setup that's a key component of the film, as opposed to maybe something in advance where, you're working on it in advance so that by the time you get to set, you have a stuntman who just steps in and like that's his job, as opposed to now where his job is many pieces. This is just one fraction of it.
Right. I think I would have originally said yes. I would have loved to have learned this fight sequence before so I could have had it rehearsed and perfect and whatever. But I knew it would have limited the creativity of the team. And so it's almost like you sacrifice your ability to, perfect it per se, with the, it's kind of a trade-off. It's like either that or it's the creativity that you get when you're working on the scene on the spot. And that creativity, that's the only way it happens. And so I was willing to, I'm willing to do that. Plus, luckily for me, I pick up choreography very quickly as like someone who's a dancer, and even with WWE, obviously, part of some of that is, quote unquote choreography, but or improvisation. Mm-hmm. And so I actually felt pretty comfortable doing it once we got in the routine of it. I was more nervous going up to it, like, what if I don't, can't figure it out? But once I got there, I felt very comfortable, and I felt like that's the way it should be.
Well, you're pretty much the muscle of the film, which is sort of this very rough, intimidating character that in the past would have easily gone to a male actor. Are we in the midst of sort of a paradigm shift in Hollywood where we're now starting to see more opportunities for women to be just as badass in these types of roles as male counterparts? Because like the Fast and Furious films have started to do that as well too, with Gina Carano now being involved a lot, and as well as Ronda Rousey. So are we starting to see more of those roles be created, I guess, for this sort of new dynamic of women?
I think there's a complete paradigm shift going on, and I think some of that actually stems from what you see in the ring in WWE, what you see in the ring at UFC. Ronda basically changing everyone's viewpoint about what a woman's fight is or looks like, or, how people think about them. And so all of a sudden people go, oh, people like to watch, women, badass women fight or do whatever they do best. People enjoy watching that. And like, for some reason, no one had figured that out yet. And now that people are recognizing that, it's being implemented into film much more. And a big part of that is, it's nice to see a little bit of a shift from these actresses who are brilliant actresses, but you're like, Angelina Jolie is an example. She's a brilliant actress and she plays these roles really well. But when it comes to the fight scene, you're like, really? Like, she's really skinny, and I have a really hard time believing that she just like punched that guy and he flew over there. Like, I don't know. So it's cool to watch somebody like Ronda be on the screen and really have these like sweet fights that you're like, yes, that's what a female fight should look like, and it's believable and it's fun. So I'm really excited to be a kind of a part of that movement in my way, and just being or benefiting from that movement and being able to play roles like this where I get to be the muscle and I get to be this fun character that like the men are just like, whoa, what is this chick, like a little bit intimidated and freaked out by me.
Well, let me ask you that as it sort of relates back to the WWE, which is I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on the change from the Divas to now an actual women's division. I mean, even by name, it's now the women's division. Yeah. What were your thoughts on sort of that change going forth, and were you in favor of it?
Oh, I'm so in favor. I'm so happy to see what's going on with the women right now, and I'm happy for them. I'm proud of them. I think it's a long time coming. These are talks that were had when I was there, and that these are, little steps that we were all making since, probably 15 years ago. And, we had setbacks here and there based on kind of like all of a sudden they just say, oh, we just want women doing, pillow fights. And then all of a sudden, and then it's like, oh, we don't want the Divas doing anything. And that's like kind of when I started. It was like we were non-existent until like, maybe towards the end of my career, where finally there was like we were really integrated into storylines and into matches, and now it's just taken off, and it's really cool to watch, and it's really it's really inspiring, because it just shows that yes, women can not only be as entertaining as men, but we can also put on matches that are just as good as the matches that men put on. And that's an important thing to recognize and to allow happen.
Do you think you were kind of ahead of your time then in that respect, because the window has now been opened up a little bit more for women to be able to compete as actual athletes, and as you said, to have real matches, and be a part of now, what the women are being given the green light to do, when before there was a very much restricted vision that the quote unquote divas fell under previously. So, I mean, do you feel that you missed that opportunity to be a part of that in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a part of me that's like, that would have been great if that existed when I was there. But I also know everything is a process, and that process started when I was there. So those were talks that were had. Those were, little steps that were being made. Those were discussions that were had. I remember crying to Stephanie McMahon and being like, what the hell is going on, and why is this happening? Like, why, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. And just seeing these little steps be made in the right direction, it just takes time. So it doesn't happen maybe over one Divas career, or they're not even Divas. I'm so trained to say that word that now it's like
nailed into your head.
Okay. Yes, but it's not going to happen through one woman's career. It's going to happen maybe through two or three, and that's kind of where it is. So while I would have loved to have been a part of it at this stage, I feel like I was a part of it just at an earlier stage, where we didn't get quite the glory from it, but I'm happy to see where it ends up.
I mean, you have your acting career going on. You're involved in the sort of women's self-defense program. You have a family. You're still relatively young in wrestling years, though. So do you ever get that itch to sort of maybe see if you could give it a whirl in this new era of women's wrestling? Or is that kind of one of those things where you've put it to bed, you've made your peace with it, and you're moving on? Yeah, I mean, the itch definitely happens. You can't ever get rid of the itch, but knowing that, I'm just in a different place now, and I did have to put it to rest and have to say, wow, would I love to be a part of what's going on right now? Of course. But I feel like I'm a part of something equally as important on this side of things, so, and specifically with, the women's self-defense movement. And I see how this is picking up so much momentum. And I see how this is again, this is part of this whole paradigm shift that's happening, where women are saying, oh, women can fight too. Women can be, badasses too. And also these quote unquote badass women also don't have to be, 5'9" and super jacked. They can be regular everyday women. And that's really the message that I think is the most important. Everyday women can have their bit of badassness as well. And that's really what I want to teach through the Women Empowered program, and through, teaching women jiu-jitsu and teaching women self-defense, is I can defend myself, I can fight for myself, and just feeling that confidence, the same confidence that we got from being in the ring and from all of these things. I want women who, don't have that opportunity to feel the same thing I got to feel. Let me ask one more quick question, which is, I wanted to see if I can get your thoughts on sort of the WWE draft and the brand extension, because you were a part of things the last time when Raw and SmackDown were separated into unique entities. So what do you think of the idea to split the rosters again? And what do you think needs to be done this time around to make the concept work? Yeah, honestly, I think it's just something to a segment that they wanted to have. I don't know. To be honest, I feel like it's going to all end up the same, which is we had the draft, and then all of a sudden it's oh, you're on Raw, but you're going to be on SmackDown this week. And you're like, wait, so then why did we, okay, I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe they'll stick to it this time, and maybe they have an internal reason of why they're doing that I have no idea of. So I think if they just actually stick to the rosters being the rosters, then that's a start. But in the past, they had just kind of flip-flopped people all around from different shows. So it didn't really hold. All right, Eve, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sure, of course, Billy. Thank you. My very special thanks once again to Eve Torres Gracie for taking the time out of her day to have that most excellent conversation with me. Once again, Skiptrace in theaters and on demand September 2nd. So be sure to check it out. Stars Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville. All right, back into some more wrestling action, as I do want to talk a little bit more about SmackDown, which I'll hold off just for a few minutes. I want to give you a taste of what happened on Raw coming out of SummerSlam. So the big news, really, was the injury to Finn Balor, as we discussed at length on the very special SummerSlam weekend edition of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. Finn Balor crowned the first ever Universal Champion, defeating Seth Rollins at SummerSlam for such a tremendous and prestigious honor, to sort of be the face, the flagship talent of the flagship show, Monday Night Raw. Unfortunately, as we learned just hours leading into Monday Night Raw this week, Finn Balor suffered injury at SummerSlam. There had been some things circulating following SummerSlam and early into Monday about Finn Balor sporting a sling following the event. Made his appearance on the Today Show with newly crowned women's champion Charlotte. Did the promotional duties required of the new Universal Champion. But something wasn't right. And as a result, needed to look into what pained Finn Balor. And what we learned was that Finn Balor, seriously injured during his bout with Seth Rollins at SummerSlam, happened on once again another buckle bomb by Seth Rollins, same move which injured Sting in a match last year, effectively ending his career with a neck injury. But this was a buckle bomb into the ringside barricade that separated, or rather dislocated, Finn Balor's shoulder. Balor was able to pop it back in and continue on with the match, which once again a testament to the toughness of this guy, sort of gutting out the pain in order to climb the mountain for the Universal Championship. But further damage done. I believe a torn labrum was the diagnosis. And as a result, Finn Balor on the shelf. Surgery now complete to repair the damage, and rehab and recovery will soon follow. But with 4 to 6 months, the recommended time to truly treat this injury. Heartbreaking to know that Finn Balor, who less than 24 hours ago was crowned the first ever WWE Universal Champion, an honor that can never be taken away from him or removed from the history books, was forced to relinquish his title, leaving the brand new title vacant, and setting the stage for the WWE to scramble in order to crown a new champion. So with Raw opening, you had sort of all sorts of personalities coming down the ring to stake their claim to be the rightful new Universal Champion. And of course, that parade was led by Seth Rollins. And what we got was a series of matches then set up throughout the night by GM Mick Foley to find a way to make a new champion. And so we got a series of 4 matches, 4 one-on-one matches, with the winners of those matches coming back next week for Monday Night Raw for a fatal 4-way match to find the new Universal Champion. So the 8 individuals that were involved in these matches were Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins. You had Kevin Owens versus Neville. You had Big Kaz versus Rusev. and Roman Reigns versus Chris Jericho. Now, at least right out of the gate, with you had Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn, when Sami Zayn first put his name into the hat, threw his hat into the ring, I got excited because I said, maybe Monday Night Raw is going to rally behind Sami Zayn, give Sami Zayn something of substance to work with, and create that new underdog character that fans love to get behind. A new version of Daniel Bryan, the aforementioned Daniel Bryan, who we talked about earlier in the show. But once they paired him up in a match against Seth Rollins, I threw up my hands and I said, well, that's over. And as to be expected, Seth Rollins went on to victory. Essentially, of the 4 matches, everyone you thought would walk away victorious did. And it sort of showed how thin the Raw roster is in terms of people you credibly envision in the main event level and people you don't. We know that Neville isn't going to be competing for the Universal Champion right now. We know that. We wish it was different, but we know that. Big Cass was sort of the name that stuck out like a sore thumb because he's part of an incredibly popular and very new tag team. But at the same time, when Enzo Amore was injured, we saw sort of the steps being taken to test whether or not Big Cass could be a singles competitor that everyone rallies behind. A fan favorite. And so what we have is a Fatal 4-Way next week that will see Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens versus Big Cass versus Roman Reigns. And you look at the 4 individuals in this match and you immediately put your face in your palm and you say to yourself, please don't let it be Roman Reigns again. Did we not learn our lesson the last time? And I'm not a Roman Reigns hater. I'm not. I think Roman Reigns is unfairly criticized on a number of levels by the fan base, who are still holding on to this sentiment that Roman Reigns somehow took Daniel Bryan's spot back in the Royal Rumble 2 years ago. He's fine as a talent. I don't know that he's fine as your champion. Once again, it's the John Cena problem, but magnified. Why would you want someone at the top of your brand who's just so divisive? You shouldn't want your babyface to be hated by half the audience. You should want your babyface champion to be beloved by most everyone. Now, granted, you're not going to please everybody. But if there's a portion, and a solid portion, of your fan base that just downright doesn't like the guy, and it doesn't mean that they can't, but you got to earn their endearment. I don't know that that's the guy you want. You should either have somebody who is mostly beloved or mostly hated. Granted, there's always going to be baby faces who get booed, and there's always going to be heels that get cheered by some segments of your audience. But you don't want it to be flipped. You don't want a babyface champion or babyface period who's getting booed all the time or heels getting cheered all the time. If so, you're just building the character wrong. And I think the problem with Roman Reigns is they've built the character so wrong for so long, that it's going to take a major overhaul to make this guy work. And I think that they are still committed to him as a babyface, even though right now, currently entrenched in a feud with Rusev, he's behaved like a complete dick the whole time. This character's a douche. Roman Reigns has been turned into a douche, and no one wants to root for douche. Ryan Lochte won gold medals for the United States in swimming in the Olympics. Showed that he's a giant douche. No one's rooting for him. And he's American. Americans aren't rooting for an American swimmer to win gold medals in the Olympics because he's a douche. And proved quite amazingly to be a douche. People don't like douches. They just don't. They don't root for douche. They root for people that they can somewhat identify with. People who make them feel good about themselves, not somebody who they look at and go, what a douche. And Roman Reigns has insulted women, ruined somebody's wedding, injured a guy who is merely defending the honor of his wife. What a horrible way to present your babyface. Horrible way to do it. And Big Cass just isn't ready here. He's just not ready. And if he does, you run the risk of having the Roman Reigns problem, which is that while, yes, he's incredibly popular and people like him, they like the tag team aspect, at least for now. And they're going to feel like he's being forced down their throat, Roman Reigns style, because he's fresh, he's new, hasn't really earned the respect in ring of the fan base yet. Yes, he's incredibly entertaining, just like Roman Reigns was as part of the Shield. But by the same token, Big Cass is Roman Reigns in a number of levels. I mean, look at an Enzo Amore Big Cass tag team match. Who takes most of the beating? It's Enzo Amore. He sells the match. And Big Cass comes in, gets the hot tag, clears house, and they get the go-home cue for the match. So as a result, Big Cass mostly gets to work the high points of the match. Doesn't really take much of the beating. Nobody wants to watch Big Cass take a beating for 20 minutes. Not when Enzo Amore's around, he's so good at it. So I think Big Cass presents similar problems to Roman Reigns on the babyface level. Now, you look over on the heel side, Seth Rollins, we've been there and done that, and it's fine. I think there's still a lot of untapped potential there from his injury, from before the injury. I'd like to see him a little bit more, a little stronger than just sort of the chicken shit heel. So Rollins, I think, wouldn't be a bad pick, even though, you know, he did lose at SummerSlam. So there's a part of that just makes you go, still feels second best. I mean, I realize he was the champion before and whatnot, and then he was the champion again and had the title taken from him at Money in the Bank by Dean Ambrose, but he's sort of been around the main event for a while. And if we're in this true new era, what you really want to do is create new main eventers. You want some social mobility within your roster. And Kevin Owens, I think, presents that for you. Kevin Owens is a tremendous talent on your roster. And he's probably the best heel that you have. And if you want to create a situation down the line for Finn Balor 4 to 6 months from now for his triumphant return, you put that belt on Kevin Owens, perhaps. Have him hold it for those 4 to 6 months and set up a match down the line with Finn Balor for who is the rightful Universal Champion. If it's Seth Rollins, it's just going to feel like we've done that before, and I thought we're trying to do some different things here in the new era. So my pick, my hopeful pick, my fingers crossed pick is Kevin Owens for the reasons I just stated. We'll see if WWE Creative agrees with me. I probably believe that they will not. So with that emotional moment of Finn Balor having to relinquish the title and then set in motion crowning a new champion next week on Raw, there was another emotional beat to Monday Night Raw this week. True emotion all around the WWE Universe this week. Between The Miz and Daniel Bryan and Finn Balor. Real emotion. This is when wrestling's good at its best. So we had one other real true emotional moment on Monday Night Raw. And that was following Charlotte recapturing the Women's Championship at SummerSlam. And of course, all sorts of rumors around Sasha Banks, which I'm going to say shame on wrestling fanboys, the IWC, so to speak, for spreading horrendous reputation-tarnishing rumors about Sasha Banks that were all unfounded and untrue. So Sasha Banks probably suffered some sort of injury at SummerSlam, will be sort of on the shelf for a little bit to recover. And we, of course, being the 100% unapologetic Sasha Banks mark that I am, I wish her nothing but the best. Any speedy, healthy, quick recovery. But so Charlotte comes to the ring to cut a promo against Sasha Banks, talking about how, once again, she had no business being in the ring with her. And once again, the Queen reigns supreme, with Charlotte once again atop the women's division. And it sent Mick Foley down towards the ring to talk about how impressive Charlotte's win was, but that the challenges ahead of her, they were still numerous. And that there was one challenge now that she was going to probably have to face as the newest, hottest free agent in the women's division had just been signed by Mick Foley to Monday Night Raw. And that brought out Bayley, former NXT Women's Champion, and all-around amazing talent. Bayley was called up to the main roster officially. Now she is officially a part of Monday Night Raw. Once again, as I stated on the last episode, that NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2 was her real swan song in NXT, her chance to say goodbye to that fan base, a graduation of sorts, as my good friend Cody Starbuck would say. And once again, genuine emotion in the moment, because it felt so good to see someone as genuinely well-liked and respected as Bayley being given the opportunity to live out her dream as a WWE superstar, a professional wrestler, now on Monday Night Raw. And it was only fitting for it all to come full circle in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. That arena, that city, the very same place where Bayley captured her very first NXT Women's Championship in 2015 in an all-timer, a classic, one of my 3 all-time favorite matches against the boss Sasha Banks. That city, that arena, the very same place this year where Bayley once again challenged to regain the NXT Women's Championship at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2 in a match against Asuka. A match that she lost, and once again a match that was her farewell to NXT. And now that same arena, that same city, where she is born into the WWE. And I had genuine joy and excitement and happiness having watched Bayley for the last couple of years really come of age as a professional wrestler in the WWE/NXT system. And once again, true emotion watching that happen. She was then given a Raw debut match versus Dana Brooke, with sort of Charlotte pushing aside the fact that she wasn't ready for a match tonight. And once again, speaking to the quality of Bayley, who that Brooklyn crowd loved. Probably the best match I've seen Dana Brooke have since being called up to the main roster, which is saying something, because week after week I say Dana Brooke looks horrible, as if she's regressed since moving from NXT to the WWE. But this was a true match where you saw the benefit of Dana Brooke. You saw what Dana Brooke could be. So once again, just a true range of emotions on Monday Night Raw, which was a pretty good show. A couple of off things. Titus O'Neil with an in-ring promo, not good. Truly not good. The Dudley Boys' retirement, fine for what it was until it became really weird as it got interrupted by the Shining Stars and then Anderson and Gallows. But once again, much love to the Dudley Boys for everything they've given to professional wrestling over the year, including probably being the all-time greatest tag team ever to ever step into the squared circle. So overall, just a really good Monday Night Raw. And then SmackDown, another real solid show. Once again, you talk about the Miz Daniel Bryan encounter, which please go watch if you haven't already on Talking Smack. Also, Talking Smack using that forum to have Carmella attack Nikki Bella after having her attack her during SmackDown, setting up some sort of a feud there and welcoming Nikki Bella right back into it. You had a creation of a SmackDown Women's Championship as well as SmackDown Tag Team Championship, so giving those divisions something to fight for. Even if I'm not crazy about the blue belts. The blue belts are fine. I wish there was a little bit more creativity put into the belts, period, where they didn't all look the same. You know, some of the benefits of having those belts is that, look, you want belts that people rally around and love, and then, you know, maybe they go out and they drop, you know, $300 or $400 to have a replica of that belt. If you just have one belt that mostly looks the same, buying one just effectively, just one size fits them all. So I wish there was more uniqueness rather than uniformity to those belts. But I thought just overall, a good week coming out of SummerSlam. Talking Smack has now established itself as a must-watch component of WWE programming following SmackDown Live every Tuesday night. You have AJ Styles as the number one contender to challenge Dean Ambrose for the title at Backlash, which I think is another tremendous opportunity for AJ Styles and maybe an open window of opportunity to shift that belt and generate some heat around Dean Ambrose again, which I think sort of took a dip following or leading into and following SummerSlam. Tremendous match between Styles and Ziggler to close out SmackDown. Bray Wyatt once again showing up. Really solid week for the WWE. Really solid week this week. And sort of laying the groundwork for where we're going forward in an uncertain way. Possibility of zigging where we think they previously might have zagged. And once again, blurring the lines of reality making you once again think that wrestling is real, injecting some kayfabe into the product to work the fans and get them talking and paying attention. So it doesn't all feel so bland, doesn't all feel so by the numbers, so by the book. It feels very much unpredictable, the way wrestling typically is when it's at its best. With that said, I'm getting the go-home cue, so let's wrap this bad boy up and send us on our way. Make sure you hit us up on social media. All the social media pages at the IWC Show on Twitter, at the IWC Show on Twitter, so you can be notified anytime brand new show goes up, as well as any breaking wrestling news that we want you to take notice of at the IWC Show. Also, at Tis Infamous, at TIS Infamous. That's for the mothership. This is Infamous. Good content going up there on a regular basis, so check us out. You'll be notified there as well, at Tis Infamous. And for myself, all my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness put into the written word in 140 characters or less, at Infamous Kid. That's KIDD, at Infamous Kid on Twitter as well. Make sure you follow all three of those accounts. Facebook, 2 pages, facebook.com/tisinfamous and facebook.com/bullythekid. Always excellent discussion threads going on, so participate and take part in those over on Facebook, facebook.com/tisinfamous, facebook.com/bullythekid. Podcast, as you know, you found it already, but if you have a preferred podcast distribution model, you like one over the other, you can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. So iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, SoundCloud, Google Play, Intelligent Wrestling Conversation can be found wherever it is that you want to hear it. So just subscribe to it wherever it is that you want it to be, so you can have the show delivered directly to your phone or tablet every time we drop a brand new one. And we also ask that you like and rate and comment. So any sort of comments you want to leave, let us know if you like the show, you don't like the show, how we're doing. Leave those comments as well. And make sure you rate. So 5 stars, 4 stars. We hope for 5 stars because I think we're doing pretty well. But make sure you rate for us. It's very important. Helps for placement on the show. And we just encourage you to take a couple of seconds to go through those steps. And much thanks if you do that for us. As far as my work, you can find it on a regular basis at joeblow.com, as well as thisisinfamous.com. I want to thank my special guest from earlier in the show, Eve Torres Gracie. Make sure you check out her brand new film, Skiptrace, in theaters and on demand as of September 2nd. Always a great conversation. Hope to have another one with her in the future. So much thanks to her for showing up here on the show this week. I've been your host, Billy Donnelly. This has been Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I'll be back here next week talking more wrestling as we keep moving forward. In the meantime, you have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. I'm out for now. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.